Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the fifth day of our international course, short term course on soft skills, emotional intelligence, and classroom management. The first speaker of today is going to be Miss Anuradha Sriram, mentor and teacher trainer in Chennai. She has 18 years of experience as teacher. She has trained students to participate in various literary activities, debates, inter and intra school competitions, dramatics. She has been a team lead, editor of school magazine, teacher in charge for career counseling, and have actively coordinated curricular and co curricular activities conducted by the school. She has been the head of the department of English department and has worked intensively on lesson planning, quality question papers and assessments. She has graduated in science with physics, mathematics and statistics and a post graduation in English. Right now, she is a full-time scholar completing her research in the area of content and language integrated learning. She has also published papers. We are very enlightened to have you among us, ma'am. The session is yours. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Risha ma'am, for this introduction. It's an immense pleasure to be a part of this short-term course. I hope I'm audible. Is it clear, ma'am? Risha ma'am? Can you
Yes, ma'am.
confirm?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah,
You're clear.
yes. So today's topic is on effective writing. That's the topic that I have taken because over the years of teaching and dealing with higher secondary students, I have seen strategies that work well in the classrooms. So that is why I have taken this so that I could share uh, with you all whatever experiences that I have gained over the years. Okay, I like to share my PPT and then start my presentation. And thank you so much to Joyce sir for inviting me to this session. It is an immense pleasure to be a part of this group. I'll just present now. Yeah, is it clear? Yeah, so this is the topic that I wish to start. So let's understand writing. Okay, the full presentation, I'm trying to base it on these three lines. One is classroom procedures to teach writing. As I ma'am said, Risha ma'am said, I have 18 years of experience. These are some of the strategies that have worked well in the classrooms. So I'm trying to share those strategies with you all today. And the second is what is effective writing, how to do effective writing as individuals, as teacher trainers, as educators, how we have to impart it. And third is the academic writing aspect of it, because as research scholars we need this aspect of writing as well. And my journey has been such that I've been a teacher trainer, starting from communicative writing, teaching children how to write it. And now right now I'm doing my PhD in content and language integrated learning. So academic writing is essential, and I understand this more importantly because my area of study is content and language integrated learning. So how effective you can make content learning when you have language skills. So that is the area that I working on, especially in the school context when children are learning a lot of academic text. How to make that academic text more readable, more understandable, is this area of content and language integrated learning. So moving on, I will try to bring it down. I like this various four stages that is expressed by Bilgar Rivers, because he actually puts them in. I mean, he puts them in four different stages. First is writing down. We all understand that there is a lot of apprehensions. There are by the students, as for any individual for that matter, to write. When it comes to writing, there is a little hesitation. There are we are little apprehensive about it, and we wonder what it is there. So the second part is the language aspect of it. Many a time there are flooded with thoughts. It happens to most of us, and then we know what we want to write. There are a lot of thoughts. I've seen it in students as well, higher secondary students. I was teaching class 11 and 12, so I've seen they know what to write. So but then when it comes to writing, there is this gap with respect to language. So that comes to the next stage, what is the production. So you have to convert those thoughts into words, and that is the challenge. That is where the language support is needed. That is where we as teachers have to support them in converting, giving them the required scaffolding in order to produce them their thoughts into words. The last is the expressive stage, so where they are able to express the thoughts and communicate effectively. Ultimately, the purpose of writing as one of the LSRW skills is very, very important, especially in the modern day context, where we are writing a lot of emails. We are global players in the world market. So there is a lot of writing that happens through communication. So the four stages. So coming on to the classroom procedure, many a time, even when I attend workshops or anything, we have to motivate pupils to write. So that is the first thing that any resource person would be telling a group. Okay, you have to motivate them to write. But honestly, each one of us know as teachers how difficult it is to motivate, or as individuals also, as students, as research scholars, we have this writer's block, isn't it? Sometimes when you sit down to write and there is half a dozen things that you want to do, you hear a phone call, or you want to you just want to, you get 100 reasons to just stop writing, and then just escape from that. So there is a need to motivate the pupils to write. Now, how do we do it? There are some pre-writing motivation tasks that one could do, like bringing in posters or cartoons. Cartoons, I have found them to be very effective when we are teaching students how to read between the lines. Okay, so when you're teaching them, because when in a matter of 2 3 sentences you are able to communicate a lot of things, and there is a lot of reading between the lines that you need to do. So giving them cartoons as pre-writing, and posters, or even audio or video clippings will motivate them and bring them into the idea of wanting to write. Okay, that is wanting to write, the urge to write, the need to write. So motivating pupils to write. And secondly, I very often see when in the papers, in the question papers, or in the discussions, just a question like write. When you say somebody to write, actually there is, the mind goes blank, because you simply do not know what you have to be writing, how you have to be writing, what is that you want to write. So as kind of a brainstorming that happens in the class works very well. Mind maps, when you put mind maps on the board, and then when we start discussing the topic, and they work very well when we ask students to write. And third is the language support. As language teachers, I think this language elements, what are the in terms of the vocabulary list. If you are a teacher and you're teaching poetry, I found this immensely effective, this strategy. The first thing that I ask them to do, if I have to teach a poetry, say let's say the topic is water and there's a poetry on water, say, and the first thing, without even reading the poetry or the poem or anything for that matter, the first class is, I say, come on, let's put water on the board and give me all the words that come to your mind. And you will believe me, there will be about 150 words that have been listed on the board. Anything related to water, you put it on the board, and then you ask the students, come on, you write a 4-line poetry or a 6-line poetry. In matter of 40 minutes, there are poetries that have come out really exceedingly well, because they have some group of words they will mismatch, some permutation combination the students will be able to put it, and then they will be able to write 4-line poetry. Immense, it's this strategy of writing, introducing poetry to them through this form is very, very effective. And the tense factor, of course, they keep jumping tenses when they write. So they start with present tense, will move on to the past tense. So this tense, what is a tense that they need to maintain, that we as teachers have to give them some instructions on that. And if it is a first person narration, the use of I factor, how it to make it like the how important it is. Because and then when we say it is a narration, we say it is more to do with how one felt about it rather than what happened. Okay. And when we bring out this distinction between what it means to report, what it means to narrate, I think the writing is more effective. So moving on, the most next important part that comes into the thing is content. Okay. And I request participants, at any point of time you wish to stop me, you could stop, or you jot down the questions, you could ask me. I'm just sharing whatever I have learned over the years, and so I will be more than happy to share whatever I know. So this content part, what is this content? Now how to build this? Now this has worked very well, and it will work even if you are a student who is wanting to write. Okay. And ask, say this is the topic, the content is there, four questions on the topic. What is it? What is it that you have? What is it about the content? What is its definition? What is the introduction part? Okay. And then the second part is why of it, where, why, and where, sorry, why, what are the factors, where does it impact, what are the pros and cons. So when we do brainstorming on these lines, when we start answering these questions, automatically there are things that fall in place, and we build on the content. And then there's finally the closing paragraphs is suggestions and solutions, where uh, can we give some suggestions, can we give some solution to the problem, if at all there is a solution required, or what could be your individual's contribution in addressing the content. So this way we can build on the content. Now this kind of brainstorming, when it is done in the class, it is very very effective. Building mind maps on this line, as individuals, if you are doing some writing also, when we answer all these questions, it works. It works finally also. I will show you a PhD template, how to write a research template. In that also, the same questions, the questions, if they are answered, we get better content. I just put an example to show how it works. Say the topic is drug abuse. Okay. And then ask the student to define what it is. What is drug abuse? Abuse, many a time the topic itself is not clear to the student. So it can be that the student learns what is the meaning of the word drug abuse. So when there's some kind of questioning and discussion happens, where when they define, and then we explain, and then there are some words that are related to the topic, those terminologies. It could be like, de-addiction, or it could be words like what are, where it affects, like, so all this. Now where and what, ask next question. Come on, answer all these questions here, just put bullet points there under this heading. So what are the factors that cause drug abuse, and how it affects, does it affect the youngsters, why does it affect the youngsters, what is the impact, what is the then you keep on adding on to that point. Physical, emotional abuse, medically, how they become sick, all this could be the points that will happen in the subsetting paragraphs. Then the final conclusion part will be how to solve it, the suggestions as individuals, how one could be aware, how, what kind of awareness campaigns can one conduct as a community, how can we stop or put respond to this, what are the government policies or the law enforcers. Now effectively, when you see, we have almost gathered about 8 to 9 points, and if when we answer this, and easily an article or an essay about 200 300 words, a student will be able to develop. Even as individuals, we could write out, it will work immensely well when we are able to answer these questions. So in addition to that, uh, slowly, when there is this in the initial stages, subsequently the student realizes that there are few things that he or she does not know about the topic. That is when we bring in the reading skills. So yesterday ma'am was talking about the reading strategies and reading things that we have to do in. So now we can give suggested reading where they can bring in some statistics, some if suppose if you're talking about the government policies and the laws, come on, do one group can do some reading on the topic and come back with some content or some material on what are the government policies, what are the laws that are existing. Okay. And so this kind of group work, and if you can we can integrate writing with listening. And that is when, in the initial stages, when it is brought into the system, that the content is very important, without which he cannot write. The student will start reading as well on the given topic. So coming to the different types of writing, now that we have taught them the basic techniques, then we one can expose them to the different types of writing, and expressive writing, narration, and description. Now what I have found is, especially there is a clear demarcation between write a report, write an article. Now, I have really found that when we do parallelly both, that the tone in which we write a narration, or the tone in which we write a description, when we parallelly show the comparisons, it is more effective. And in that way, the student is able to draw the differences between the different types of writing. When it is narration, how the content, the coherence, and the flow, how the flow goes, and with respect to descriptions. Now, and then when it comes to informative writing, that is more to do with academic writing of the process and the research things. And then the last part is when we are trying to persuade somebody to write. Now, when we do the research stages, we are building on a thesis, we are building on the findings, the inferences. So it is not argumentative, but then we have to develop, we have to progress it in such a way that we are able to justify our stand. So there is a logical way, and also a logical progression in which we present the idea. So we are trying to persuade the reader into understanding and coming into an agreement that our finding is useful and it is true, whatever we are finding. So slowly we can from when we start with expressive writing, how we graduate, I have seen it how it happens, because writing academic writing, I'm almost completing my thesis now. I'm close to submission. With God's grace, I should be submitting in close time. So this helps when we grow gradually from one to another. Now, one thing that I have found is the questionnaire, the question papers. Now, I was talking to just a few minutes back, I made a reference that when we do parallelly, when we tell them parallelly how the different types of writings are there, okay, and it makes a lot of impact on the students. And as when we are learning to write as well, and how to differentiate from a formal writing to an informal writing. Half a dozen articles are there on the net, are even there in the books. But then unless we imbibe or take in those things, like it comes into our system that there is a subtle difference between the formal writing and an informal writing, it is very, very difficult to bring it to practice. Now, this I just punning on that word refrigerator, I just picked up one example to just show how we can make writing effective in the class. It is very interesting, and the student is motivated to write as well. Now you can see, I just said write a short description of a refrigerator. Of a refrigerator, what does a refrigerator had? That will be the thing a student would be right. Now there is, if on a first read, there is no difference between the first and the second question. But then when we notice clearly your refrigerator, there is a opinion. It is an opinion that he is referring to, or that is expected of the writer to write it. Now this kind of subtle differences when we bring in, and slowly you can bring in, imagine yourself to be a refrigerator, write a short description. So there is gradation, there is a different genre in which the each writing is happening. And also, as teachers, we can put it parallelly on the board, or we can actually see what is the differences between the different types that of writing here. Now look at the fourth one. I've said it is your latest model. Now you need to pep up your sales. Now as a salesman, how will you describe your refrigerator? Okay, now he has to use he will be talking about the, see that is when the vocabulary comes into play. When he's talking, he'll talk about the model, he'll talk about the guarantee, he will talk about how it is fast moving, the color, and so many other things. So uh, now next is the report. When it comes to the report, he has to write it in passives. The same thing about a refrigerator, the gas leak, and how it has to be there. And the last is the manual, instruction manual. So one exercise like this in the class, when we do with the same topic, the different types on which they can write, and easily distinguish between what is formal writing, what is informal writing. I think it works well. And coming to the next thing is what we have. This is the next is the template. Now this raft writing template, it works well. Even when we are writing, when we start writing, I think this technique really works well. Now, as you see here in this, now this is somebody writing, you are writing, you are writing a first person narration. This is, you are writing as a salesman, and you are working, so you are playing different roles here. You're playing a representative of the company, the colony. The third is a technician. As a technician you're writing. So when it comes to this, the role in which you write varies. Now all this, as we grade to the higher level order, they form very important. Initially in the lower order, the person who is writing does not make sense. But slowly when we develop in the raft, R stands for role. In what capacity are you writing? In what role are we writing when we write it? Okay. And the second part, A, is for the audience. To whom are we writing? Okay. Here you will be writing. Here you are just writing a short description. Here again, I have not said to whom you are writing. But here, when you say you're writing a salesman, trying to write how you are writing to an audience, you're writing to your customers, you're writing to the residents. So how the audience part comes into play, one can bring it into the classroom. Or even when we do research writing, it is always important to view it from the perspective of the examiners, because it is the examiners who are going to read whatever we are going to write. And we as a research scholar, when we write it, the examiner is an expert in the field, and so in their perspective, how would one view it? So the audience to whom we are writing becomes very important. And of course the format, whether it is formal, informal, is it report has to be in passives. So this is the other part which we can bring in. And the topic that we have to write, the topic that, again going back to the content, the mind map, it all helps. Now this is one thing, COPS, it helps in checking. So once the writing assignment is done, we can give it for peer correction. The other student can correct it. And when the other student is correcting or doing a peer correction, the rubrics on what are the parameters that the student has to check. He can check on capital, how whether the capitals word letters are used properly, whether the organization of the paragraph. Now as teachers, you know that is coherence and organization all play a very important role when it comes to writing. I have not touched upon all those very elaborately here, because I'm trying to give only the surface on how strategies that we can do on making writing effective in the classrooms. And the punctuations and the spellings. Now when the student knows on what lines he has to assess, automatically when he writes, these things get into his system, and he will consciously keep track of all these things when he is writing. So it works two ways. One side he is assessing, on other side it is he or she knows what are the things that has to work. So the other part, when it comes to writing as teachers, there is a lot of corrections that as language teachers we do, and it is very very challenging task, correcting and checking and reading essays and giving assessing the marks. So some of the ways in which we can sensitize the students to be aware of the mistakes that are committed. Mistakes I must not say, it is the errors that I must say. The errors, the type of errors that can work in the paragraph. Now I've always found it very very important to communicate and tell the student on what basis the work will be assessed. Okay. And what are the kinds of errors he could do? The sentence pattern, the subject verb agreement may not be there, the content words may not be there. For example, I was talking about drug abuse, there are some important words like de-addiction or abuse, or the words which are very very essential when it comes to writing on that content. If those words are not there, then it becomes he can, we can tell him that it is important to, he has to improve on his words and the spelling, punctuation and paragraphing. Now generally it is said, you have one introduction, you have you elaborate, and then you give a closure. Now it I in unconsciously, I do not know if it works with everybody, but unconsciously I have seen students think it is only 3 paragraphs that they have to write. It is not so. We can always tell them like how we can, how we need to break it up into elements, and do the topic sentence and break it them into different paragraphs. Now giving them the symbols, that one that we would be using as teachers to correct their papers, it helps because we don't have to write a lot in the answer papers. Many times there are more red marks that we make, and we have to write the comments there. So giving them the list of kind of errors, we give them the symbol, and then when we write, when we can use the symbols, the correction becomes effective. The student also understand what are the way, why he has lost marks, and what are the areas that has caused the errors. So this giving the symbols and keeping them, I mean, you communicate and giving them the idea of how the paper will be assessed helps. And coming to the next important, so with this I'm just doing a surface on what happens, what is the kind of strategies that we could adopt in the class in order to make writing more effective. Moving on now, why we need to do academic writing, that becomes the next aspect of academic writing. Now this is the area, as I was talking to you earlier, um, it's a very important aspect. Like Jim Cummings in 1984 has defined the 2 aspects of language learning. That is, one is the basic interpersonal communication skills, BICS. So all along, whatever we were discussing, it was only about to do with communication skills, improving in writing, and the language that is necessary for day-to-day living. It could be conversations with friends or informal interactions and things related to that. But there is the other aspect of the language, which is cognitive academic language proficiency, which is called CALP. Now unfortunately, I should we don't pay much attention to language learning on this aspect in the schools or even in the colleges. I do not know much, but then this aspect is very essential to learn the academic text. So only when the learner has the proficiency in CALP, he will be able to understand the academic text. And studies have shown 2 years of exposure to BICS, you can pick up the language well, but it requires almost 8 years to pick up academic proficiency. So academic language writing is the language that is required for understanding the text, making formal presentations, formal writing. So now the need for us to focus on giving the learner BICS as well as CALP becomes essential in the classrooms. So coming to the other thing of what is academic writing. Now you have a formal, and it follows this. I've taken it from the net, and you have so many articles on academic writing. Now, when I started writing my thesis, although as a teacher I have taught students how to write, I've been correcting papers, I've been correcting essays, but when you start writing your own theses, or you there are so many challenges that um, you encounter, you encounter so many challenges. Now why is it so? Because what challenge I found was I had almost simplified my language to suit the learner. So when I was writing, the language that I was using was not high sounding. It was very simple, and it did not fit into the requirement of academic writing. Although I know what the distinction is, because it was not in practice. The vocabulary was not in active vocabulary. So invariably, whenever I wrote it and I read it, it looked very simple, because I was so used to writing for learners to read it. So there is a certain writing for formal standards that you need to understand. And it there is a definite, it is completely formal, And then the audience, as I said, we have to understand who the audiences are. The audience are invariably experts who are reading whatever we are going to write. And so the tone has to be, it cannot be authoritative. Okay, and we cannot be very submissive, and we cannot be very timid about what we are going to say. That we have to maintain a proper tenor and tone in which we write, and the purpose of writing must be very, very effective. Unless the purpose is effective, nobody is interested in reading what we are saying. So we need to equip ourselves with specialist vocabulary. It does help when we read some of the standard papers, okay, and from the journals, the area of research that we the area that we are doing the research. When we start reading some standard benchmark papers from journals, it does help to get us an idea of how people express their ideas. Now, that I think as research scholars is the first step that we need to do when we read the papers. Of course, all of us will be reading the papers, but consciously, I think we need to understand what is the writing, how the writing is done in the paper. So when we internalize that style, that tone, when we start writing on our own, it works well. And so the key characteristics of academic writing. Now, everybody has they can give you a lot of advice, just like how I am sharing. When you read, maintain a formal tone. Now, how to maintain that formal tone? It's very, very difficult to put it to practice. Okay, when we say we have to maintain a formal tone, how to maintain a formal tone? Okay, and so next is that you do a precise language. The language, as I said, it has to be. So, how do we learn that language? We can see the papers and model papers and then do it. And the point of view. So, academic reviews, third person, it has to be third person. There should be no, I mean, we are giving our opinions, but it has to be like the opinion for the common cause. So it cannot be in first person. So the point of view, it has to be in third person. And the focus of writing, as I said, I'm almost repeating what I had said. The focus must be there, the purpose must be there, and how we organize the details. Now, what I have found, I'm just sharing what I have found, is that when I am reading the papers, and suppose I am writing chapter 1, I have a chapter 1 there, and then it is the outline of chapter 1, and then I try to bring in all the points that I read in the various papers. I try to bring in there, and now we can. I have chapter 1 where I have a collection version of all the things that are essential to be put in chapter 1. Then the second thing, when I start writing my chapter 1, that is essentially what I want to be in chapter 1. Then I start chapter 1. When I start writing, I don't edit. This is what I'm just sharing, the practices that I have followed. And as the many faculty members are here, they would be having more effective practices. But since research scholars are there and I'm currently doing it, I'm only sharing what I'm doing, what I found it to be effective. And so without editing, when we write, the flow comes, the thoughts are there, the thoughts are put into words, and the it is just that content that we want to write, and if we have put it in words. The editing, we have to do it later. Only when we start putting all the content in one, the full chapter is ready. Then when we start editing and putting it in order, we can organize the work, we can do the structuring, coherence, all those aspect of it can be taken care of well. And of course, no cut paste copy, we all know it, we are not going to follow it. So citations are important. So my professor guy supervisor said, when I read, simultaneously open a notepad where you copy the citations and keep it ready. So when there is the that is parallelly, you have to note down from where the sources and from where the paper has been taken, and what is the material that you are doing it. So now again, the style of writing, coming to the style of writing, you can all get this, it is available there. So uh, it cannot, we cannot be using colloquial words like kids and boss and stuff like that. It has to be pure formal writing. And using the phrasal verbs, not allowed. I, we, my opinion, again, that is not allowed. And then the no contractions. So when we understand what are the no's that has to come in, now when we do the writing, we can finish writing with all these things. Okay, not paying attention to the academic style, that has worked well with me. When I write, I don't pay much attention to the academic style. First I write it, then when we do the editing, pay attention to all these factors and do the effective corrections and editing. For instance, when I have like, and then I change it to for example, and then lots of, it changes to significant amount. So slowly it hits us that that vocabulary, the style of writing is not academic, and there is a need to change it. So that works well. When, because when we start correcting and editing in the first go itself, then we are lost, because there's nothing that we can write, we are not happy with what we have written, and there are a lot of gaps there, and it's not motivating at all. So the first thing is to write everything whatever has to be written for that chapter, and then ensure that the style is retained, the hedge words are removed, and this the, it automatically comes, because when we writing, if you imagine that we are writing a story, it almost comes, the thesis comes in the form of a story format of what you did, how you did, why you did, and what is the result. If we can answer these questions and get it, it almost comes on those lines. So then this aspect of it can be kept as a ready reckoner, and we can cross check to see whether the academic style of our writing matches the writing that we have done. And this book, I found it very, very useful. And they give you a lot of phrase. You can please note it down if you want this. Um, so for instance, no personal pronouns, it is clear that, okay, so instead of saying we find it so, okay, so it is in the say, it is clear that, instead of saying that many authors believe that, no, that is the way it has to be written, that's what it is. When you start reading this book, you get a lot of ideas on what are the things that you need to avoid in writing the phrases like. And sometimes the results were okay. Okay, the results were okay. Now there are loose quotes, because we are making facts, we have to justify what we have said, we have to substantiate it, and we have to convince also finally that whatever we are saying as the results are good. So the results were okay. Now this word okay does not fit in academic style of writing. And no mixing figures and words. 3 and 4, 3 figure and 4 in words, that again does not work. And then you say 1 in 10 people are wearing glasses. So now this one has to be written as one and not in numbers like this and written. And all of us know we need to use passive phrases, and it has to be in third person, and we cannot be writing it in personal pronouns. Now this book is useful. The writer also gives how to give acknowledgements, and how to, what are the phrases that we need to use when we are uh, referring to authors, how to give citations, how to use quotation marks. Now that's using quotation marks, in the it becomes very important, because when we are following MLA style or APA style, how we cite the source, that is becomes very, very important. And we need to understand how to use the quotation. So a lot of inputs and details are given in this book as to how those things have to be addressed in the academic style, in the writing. Okay, and then these connectors and linkers. Now sometimes there is the mind goes blank, and we definitely do not know how to replace whatever we have said. See, some the word in the paper that we have read, say in the model paper that we have read, consequently is the word that is used there. And no matter what, you just want to use that in your paper as well, because that fits well, and you think that I am gives the exactly tells what you want to say. But we all know that we cannot be doing that. We will fall into that it will not we cannot keep up cut paste copy exactly like that. Now a ready reckoners like this also helps when we have something like this, and then it helps us to find alternative words to what we want to say. Okay, and in that way writing becomes more effective, and we are able to replace. And then again, when we start replacing, the structure of the sentence goes apart, and the coherence of the paragraph goes, we have to restructure it. But fine, it will be our writing, we will be able to write it more effectively. So such tables, like when we have it has worked well in using connectors and linkers. Okay, and I just tried. Okay, I just tried to write one paragraph. See, this paragraph, I just found it. So we live, you can just see it here. We live on the most beautiful planet. Okay, this is we is there, not permitted in academic writing. Okay, and then the second part, which is clean and attractive nature full of greenery. Now, when you see this, it is just a description of nature, as simple as that. Okay, nature is our best friend, which provides us all our resources to live in. It gives us water to drink. Now again, it gives us water to drink. You cannot do it in academic writing. And pure air to breathe, food to eat, land to stay, animals and plants for other uses, etc., for our betterment. We should enjoy the nature without disturbing its ecological balance. Now this is the paragraph. It has been, I just try to convert it into academic writing style. Now you can see earth. Now this habitat, something that is not here, beautiful place that which we can do. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So living beings is bestowed with lot of greenery. Okay, not the meaning, whatever has to be conveyed is conveyed, but the style in which it is written, it is more formal. Now when you do we are saying our opinion, we are having that emotional attachment to what we are writing. But when it comes to academic writing, it is formal. There is no attachment to that writing that is there. There is no emotional attachment. There is it is not ours. It is as if we are writing as a matter of fact. Okay, and that is how academic writing is all about. It comes with little practice. If you are a research scholar and you are trying this, of course, mainly I'm trying to make it easy for the research scholars or students who are trying to understand how to write it. So as teachers, you can take it to your classrooms and you can just tell the students to do this, and I think it will work very well with them, and they will start being appreciative of your inputs, and then they can make use it for their writing as well. Now one example like this, and it looks so easy for the student to understand that yes, I can write. It has happened in my classrooms and I'm sharing it. So that confidence, if the student gets that he can or she can write, it is possible for everybody to write, then automatically the urge to write, the motivation to write, it just flows. And I have seen miracles happen. Children who are not writing, students who are not writing, are writing blogs today, and they're writing so effectively, and they are in big places, and the feedback that they give us, they're able to write only because they have that love for writing. And uh, so the style is, academic writing style is going to be completely different, and that is not our cup of tea. I don't think it is anything like that. It just needs practice. It needs a conscious attempt on our part to consciously make and remove those words, those phrases which which gives that informal tone to the writing. Okay, and so I saw this in one of the articles that I ever read. Academic writing is black tie writing. And what is this black tie writing? So when you're going for a formal function, you wear the tie, isn't it? You wear a tie and a suit, and you go very formal. And the look and the the way we dress up, and when we go and when we present ourselves, it's all very very formal. And how we eat and how we talk and how we what we do, everything is very very formal. So I like this academic is black tie writing. It is nothing going to be very different. It is just that it is possible to write. And another thing that has worked well in the thing is, um, uh, in the classrooms I found that a 2-minute challenge, okay, a 2-minute challenge to write, okay, that is the starting of the class. If the students write for 2 minutes, first 2 minutes of the class, or first 5 minutes of the class, if we have the luxury of time, we can give them the first 5 minutes to write, and they just have to write anything that comes to their mind, okay. And this practice has to go on day 1, day 2, and day 3, and day 4, and so on. So when, for the first 5 minutes, when they write whatever topic that comes to their mind, but they cannot be writing crap, that we have to tell them that you will not be assessing it, you will not be reading it, but it is just that they have to make meaningful sentences and write down what on a topic, whatever they feel like to write about. And believe me, when they start writing, they will come with 20 words, 25 words in the first 2 minutes or the first 5 minutes. And slowly, when the students start training, this exercise goes on for weeks or 2 3 weeks, they touch 250 300 words in a matter of 2 minutes. This they have done in 2 minutes, I'm telling you. They you teach students have touched about 250 words, 300 words. It's almost like a competition in the class. They count the number of words and do it. Now, is what all that they have written is correct? Not true. It may not, it is not true. It's not that everything that they have done, there are no structural errors, there is nothing like that. Grammatically correct sentences. It is not that. It is just that they have learned how to put their thoughts into words. And slowly, what happens when they start writing, there is no this hesitance to write. It just flows, the thought flows, and then the editing happens. They can do reordering, restructuring, and all those things. As writers, we keep doing it, we keep changing first draft, second draft, third draft, but that hesitation to write goes away when they take up this challenge. And this, as individuals, we should take up 21-day challenge of writing. 21 days, every day we should be writing something. And how to do, when to think about the topic. My teacher would always tell, when I was studying in school, she would always say, when you're doing other things, like when you're going in a bus, or when you're doing other activities, like, no, what is your brain doing? It is idle, it is vacant. So start thinking. That's what she would tell us, and that's what I would tell my students as well. So you think, you do the brainstorming, we keep thinking about what we have to write, okay. And when we sit down to write, automatically the groundwork is done. And so what happens is, there is enough to write. When there is enough to write, there is no hesitation to write. We will sit down to write. So let's do some brainstorming. When we are walking, I see people putting on to the earphones and listening to music and walking. And what I do when I'm walking, I'm thinking of what to write, okay. And I think all of us can keep thinking on what is effective. Now, if we want to improve the writing, consciously make an attempt to do it. And believe me, and you can challenge me, in matter of months, we our writing will be very very effective. And we will be able to deliver. And when we write and keep the audience in mind, and then read from the audience perspective, like I told in the raft, then automatically we can see the gaps of how the reader will view our work, and then the corrections can happen. That is the last thing we have to always do after writing and editing, and finally before submitting. We have to read it from the perspective of the person who is going to read what we have written. And then we can see how the interpretations goes, and there can be some miscommunications. We may have intended something else can be meant by the reader. So when we see from that perspective, definitely the corrections will happen and the writing becomes effective. So um, writing article or an essay for a school magazine, or writing for an article for a journal, And to writing article and a thesis and finally writing your thesis and the synopsis, writing becomes very easy, and it is not a chore, it is not taxing, it is easy when we train ourselves to write better. It is just that we have to keep thinking on what we have to write. That brainstorming, it happens, then writing becomes very easy automatically. As I said, any style, from this style to this style, we can always change, and from that style to here, it is possible. Only that we need to have these 4 or 5 sentences in place. Okay, and to need this 4 or 5 sentences, we need to have the vocabulary and the content, and for the content we need to read. So that goes the cycle, and it is possible to write. So if any of you think that it is not possible to write, or you have any gaps with respect to writing, today put a stop to it. All of us can write, and we can write very, very effectively. So I've made some references I've shared. You please refer to this book if you're writing the research thesis now. It is helpful. And I hope it was interesting and useful to you all. And if you have any questions, I will be more than happy to answer. I hope you found it useful. Do you all find it useful? Can you give me some feedback if you have any questions? If you have any challenges with respect to writing, you can share it here. We can see how we can actually discuss and see how we can address it. Thank you, ma'am. Basumati.
Hello.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello. Good evening, ma'am. This is
Good.
Pankaj
Good evening, sir.
from Garhwal University, India.
Yes, sir.
I have to discuss something.
Mm.
Before writing, something goes in our mind.
Yes.
The critical part of the writing, it goes in the mind, and that thing I find it one of the hindrances in writing. How to tackle those issues? The critical part.
In the sense, what are you talking about? The critical part,
Suppose
sir?
yes,
Something
yes,
that
yes.
is controversial.
It is not controversial if I am trying to write something,
Ah.
but the how the people is going to take these words, my thought,
Mm.
something like that.
Yes, sir. So I
That I
think,
want to know how to tackle those things. I want to write freely. I don't want any critical something just sticking in my mind.
oh, yes, sir. Two things that we have to keep in mind. So, what is the objective of writing? That we have to be clear. So, we are doing writing for the joy of writing. Then there need not be any hesitation to the thoughts about how people are going to view it, and all those things. We need not think about it. But then, if you are writing for a purpose, you are writing your thesis, you are writing for a journal, there are certain expectations that we have to meet. Okay, and so
Okay.
we have to be conscious of that, and there is the limiting factor. We cannot be writing this poetic license, they say. No, sir, when we write a poetry, we have that poetic license.
Mm.
We can write anything because there the freedom of expression is there. But when it comes to research writing, or when it comes to the journal, and if I'm the editor, I can definitely not publish something that will work against my thing. So uh, two things you do, Pankaj sir, if to my understanding, you divide for the joy of writing. When you write it for the joy of writing. Don't be worried about what are the implications of it, and how people are going to receive it. In that
Okay.
way, that flow of thoughts will be there. But when we are doing, we have to keep the audience in mind. Who is going to read it? What are the repercussions? How they are going to view it? That draft, as I told you, no, sir, we have to keep the audience in mind, because there's somebody who is going to read it. And see, if you're sending a CV, the person who's going to read your CV has to read it and be appreciative of it. So the purpose is that. So we have to. So I think if I've convinced you, please
Yes,
separate it.
yes, yes. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much,
sir.
ma'am.
Thank you, sir. So yeah, if you have any challenges with respect, if I have, because see, for 18 years or so, I've been dealing with students who simply cannot write. Okay, and then board exam, there's a different strategy how to write. We train them for writing in the board exam. That's a different strategy altogether. But how to break that block that we cannot write? If you have any kind of challenges, you please voice it out. We'll see whether we can sort it out. Or if you as teachers have found students, so you can always tell us, like if you have any such things, you can always share it out here.
Good evening, Madam. Vasumati here.
Good evening, ma'am.
Whenever I ask my students to write,
Uh,
they say that like they go blank. That
yes,
is the
ma'am.
major issue.
Yes, ma'am.
So how do we tackle that?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you,
This
ma'am.
is the constant thing. I get it in my classes also. I used to say, they say they cannot write, they cannot. So they simply cannot write, ma'am. It is not possible at all unless there is some grounding work done by the teacher by giving input, some motivation, some vocabulary list. That is very, very essential initially, unless until they pick up that knack of writing. So when
Yes.
we say write, simply no. They
Yes.
cannot write. Not even one sentence will go in that 40 minutes time. And they will be simply scratching and trying to play. It doesn't work. So when we actually put it in, and you say you finish the first paragraph, one group finish the first paragraph, just write your introduction on the topic. You do only develop it, and
Okay.
then you
Okay.
put that to work. I think that strategy will work in your class, Vasumati ma'am. It has
Okay.
worked in my class.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. I shall definitely try. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Vasumati ma'am. Yeah, writing, there's a lot of hesitations among the student community to write. They just simply find it very, very challenging to put down their thoughts into words. So try that 21-day challenge in your classrooms. It works. So they get motivated to write, and then they will start writing. And then we have to cut down on the writing. We have to say, we have to give some constraints and say so many word limit. This is the type of writing I want, and then all those restrictions we can bring on it, because we cannot allow them to simply write anything that they want. So initially we can entertain, then slowly the restrictions come, and you train them and tune them and to bring them on track. And it is a lot of hard work, I understand, but over the months the whole class will be writing. I have seen it happen. They all the 40 will be there writing. And if you are a student and you're wanting to write, you try this 21 days. You sit down and you write on some topic for 5 minutes every day, just like how we brush in the morning. 22nd day, take it from me, you will be motivated to write. It can write, anybody can write. Yes, sir. I hope you found it useful. I don't know if it has met your requirements, because we have a diversified group. So I was wondering whether I must be talking to the faculty people. Faculty people are knowledgeable people here, and so I thought mainly I will talk to students, scholars who are writing, and so unless there is an element of assessment, there's hardly any motivation to write. Yes, but yes, sir, I agree with you, sir. There is an element of assessment. Yeah. Now, I agree with you. Um, but what is the type of assessment? That is very important. When we do an assessment, actually, we should be very clear on what we are assessing. How many value points are we expecting? What is the grammar elements that we are doing? Accuracy, fluency. Split up the marks. You tell them this is your content. I will value for 5 marks. I need 10 value points in your paper. Only if you have 10 value points, I'll give you 5 marks. Okay, and then the accuracy part. 3 marks for accuracy, 2 marks for fluency. Accuracy, punctuations, spellings, your grammar structures are correct, you will get that 3 marks. Fluency, how well you write. Okay, so introducing assessment every day will not be difficult, sir. Anubhuti ma'am or sir, it will if you fix the ground rules, this is the way I'm going to assess. So if they know that they have to write 10 value points to get that 5 marks, believe me, they will get the 10 value points. And you can tell them, see, do for what define 2 marks, elaborate, factors and other things, another 2 points, and then you give your closure another 2 points. So if you say 10 points, 2 2 2 2, it will work. They know they have to just find out 2 points for what it is and do it. So in that way we can motivate them to write. Okay, and assessment is necessary. Now it is very difficult as teachers to keep on assessing every day everything that they write. It might be very difficult to assess because we correct whole lot of things there. So some kind of writing can be done. When we want them to just practice writing the topics that they like to write, when we give, it can work well. We need not give topics which we will test in the examinations. We can give topics which they like. Just that cricket match that happened, okay, write about it. You are sitting as an audience and you are trying to view it. Write your experiences, first person narration. You are batting there and you are getting to the last over. You needed 4 runs in the last 2 balls. Write your now this kind of writing they will write. They will enjoy writing. As a reporter saying there, passives, you can bring in passives there. So right from informal to formal, we can actually tune it and then we can bring it there. So if you have to write them, give them topics that they want to write. Assessment, give the rubrics and tell this is what I'm going to assess. Then they will be able to write. Yes. Yeah. Any other? Did you find it useful? I do not know if the strategies are useful. Please try it out in your classrooms. I think it should work. Yeah, I think the second speaker will be ready to join. Can we call it a day? Should I? Yes, ma'am. Yes, Risha, ma'am. I don't think there are any more questions there.
Yeah, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being with us today and giving us a brief lecture about the different stages of writing, types of writing, and how we can indulge our students into producing a good writer. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Joyce, sir, also. And thank you, organizers. Wonderful being a part of the sessions. Okay. Good luck to you all and best wishes and namaste. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma. Thank you.